What's up, everybody? This is Gabe with the Real Estate Power Play. We have Mark Monroe with us, and the Dan Caradonna is going to be here with us this morning. We're going to go over some really cool stuff. I just want to say, guys, I miss you. Welcome back. And for those who don't know, we do this every Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern time, and that would be 11 o'clock Central time for all of my people in Houston, Texas. So, guys, what's happening? Can you guys hear me okay? Everyone good?
We hear you great.
Good. Mark, how you been, man? What's going on?
Doing well, doing very well. Can't complain. Beautiful, back home in sunny Florida. It's been beautiful. I've been out. I was out in Palm Desert there for a couple of weeks, and that's quite the experience place out there. It's beautiful. The weather is it's crazy how the weather swings. It was 92 one day, and then the next day at night it got down to 44. So it's just
wow, that is a swing.
Does yours swing like that out there?
Yeah, it takes a couple days to swing that, but it will swing that way.
Yeah, very nice. Sure. But other than that, everything's going great,
Cool. Well, we're going to go in a lot more detail over what's happening in our businesses and then also how to help other people grow. Today, we're going to go over land, which is an interesting topic. I have my notes up and going. So if you guys are listening, let me pull my earpiece out. Get some notes out and going. For those who are going to be on the podcast or can listen to the podcast, you probably want to pause a couple things because Dan is the man of finding out where to find deals, how to just finance deals. We got tons of questions for him. So Dan, how you been, man?
Good. Staying busy here.
Staying busy.
Definitely keep it busy.
Yeah. And so let's jump into this, and we're just going to go full steam ahead. If you guys have any questions, by the way, that's on the live, go ahead and ask the questions. We see them here on the StreamYard. So if you want us to ask any questions to Dan or to the team about how we're doing things, just let us know. We'll be happy to ask them. And then again, we are on Facebook, YouTube. We're on all the different podcast channels. So we're able to roll from there and help you grow. All right. So Dan, before we jump into everything, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and then a little of your story of like how you got involved in doing just real estate investing?
Well, I got into real estate in 2012 and I started to look at what I wanted to do. And then I basically came across land. I actually started with Jack Bosch.
Cool.
And, I did that for a little while then and kind of got out of it for a little while. I did some other businesses and things. And then I got back into it in 2019 and pretty much been doing it full time ever since. I've done, I have some rentals right now. I just sold off a lease option. So I've done some other things, but land just to me always kind of just is where I like to go. It's a lot less competition and a lot less headaches, in my opinion.
Yeah, because you're just looking at a piece of property, right?
Pretty much.
So yeah. there's typically no tenants that's calling about toilets or faucets or roofs, stuff like that.
Exactly. You do sometimes. I'm actually dealing with this right now on a couple properties is with squatters, so you get that a little bit. So I can't say there's never any headaches. You just probably have less of them. Got it. Well, let's dive into that. So you've been doing this for a while, and then you jumped back in the last 3 years, really, just really hammering into the land aspect of things. I have a lot of questions about land. I think it's fascinating. I know some people, including myself, we do smaller types of land. We don't do big stuff, but I want to get into doing the bigger things. So I would like to approach this conversation as if I am a newbie to land. And for those who don't know, Mark has his assets. Mark's in Florida. You're in Boca also, right, Dan? Correct. Exactly.
Right. So we got two guys here from Florida. We got me from Houston, Texas. All right. So I love Texas and the outlying areas of the Houston region. And then for the other members, we have Marty that's over in upstate New York, and Ronnie's in pretty much all of Michigan. And so we have a pretty wide view of what's going on. As far as land goes, what were you doing before, and what did you see in land whenever you're doing it? Because you said Jack Bosch, and I have his books. I mean, it's definitely highlighted some of the stuff of land of going, man, this is really interesting.
Hey, I have a question. Tell me a little bit about. I'm not familiar with Jack Bosch. When you guys give me a little insight on him.
Yeah, Dan can.
Sure. And before I go there, I did want to mention, so pretty much what I'm doing is land flipping. That's
Okay,
what
cool.
I generally do. I do some assignments too. I've also gotten into land development, and then really within the last year, I've gotten into more land funding. So, meaning there's a lot of land land investors that come in. They, let's say they put a property underneath 25,000, 100, whatever, and they can't afford that. So, we'll jump in the deal, help them out, fund it, and then they'll sell it off, and then we'll kind of, split the profits or whatever agreement we have. So that's kind of what else I do as well. So as far as Jack Bosch, there's different programs out there. He's one of the top ones, and Jack Bosch is pretty much he sends out a neutral letter. So it's basically a general letter saying, "Hey, we're interested in buying your land," and then you kind of just like the residential world. You get your phone calls, and then you kind of go from there and try to buy their properties.
So Jack Bosch, Mark, is kind of like the OG in my perspective of land, right? I mean,
Yeah,
in my perspective.
yeah, definitely. He probably has the biggest following out there. I know his Facebook group has like 15,000 people, and I know he coaches a lot of people. Um, you also asked me what I did before this. I actually was in the Amazon world, so I sold on Amazon full time, third party, and then I that was kind of my break in between land and Amazon got to be kind of more of just a headache. And so I have friends that are in land. I have one of my friends that actually coaches for Jack Bosch.
Cool.
And, he's like, "Hey man, you really should start to jump back into this." And that's what I did.
That's cool. So, so let's go into, for those who don't know, how many different strategies are there considering land? Let's say if we just look at land investing and you have someone who's in single family or multifamily or anything that's wants to get involved with real estate investing. I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm in the northern region of it, which there's tons of land everywhere. And it seems like the price just keeps going up and up over our properties. So what are the different strategies that you know of or that you help people with?
So, there's so many things you can do. If you think about, you can do it in residential, then, you can probably do it in land.
Okay.
I know people doing lease options. I know people doing seller financing. They look at I know people doing the tax delinquent properties. I know people that are doing infill lots. I like to focus on the larger lots. You can go into the land development niche. You can go into the subdivide niche. You can go into the niche of wholesaling the properties where you find a builder and that builder, he can keep you busy, full time. Or like if he says, "Hey, I need properties in these 3 counties," I mean, literally an easy freeway is to go and look on Zillow and start calling those realtors and say, "Hey, look for the older listings and call those realtors and say, "Hey, what's your seller, looking for on this? Are they, desperate to sell?" And then if they are, find out what that builder's willing to pay, and then,
So
get the difference.
Dan, I got a question because I know mainly because you're kind of going in a different area there, but mainly what is like wholesaling land? That's what most like the Jack Bosch model and like I think Land Academy, their model. Let's dive into that a little bit more because that's really where you're part of more into that, correct? And finding and like what is like how like what the land wholesaling is and the model, like the numbers. Let's kind of go into like those numbers. What they're doing in that whole and like the type of mail pieces because I know you mentioned that earlier and it'll be great for the viewers to kind of understanding, especially people new getting into this, like how to go about it, and it's a lot cheaper finding out those raw lands, if you will. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So with Jack Bosch's method, he actually kind of preaches doing a double close. So you could do wholesaling with those, but a lot of times they just try to buy it, get it, get it under contract, and then find a buyer and then do a double close. And so, like, for instance, an example of the numbers might be, you might buy it for 5, and then you might sell it off for 15. So, and those are kind of a beginner one. Or, you might buy buy it for like 1,500 and then sell it for 8 or 10. You also, yeah.
So what kind of like what are they looking at? Like I know Texas is huge where they all love Texas, but what are they looking at? Like so if I'm somebody new and like start me from the beginning, like where do I go? Like what sources, like what letters, like how do I find that seller, or who is the seller? Are these sellers that are sitting on lands, inheritance? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you can go that tax delinquent route where you send just the people that are tax delinquent. I don't really focus on that. Generally, most people aren't interested in their land like they are their house. So I look at just kind of regular people that, may have had their land for, 20 years, 10 years, whatever, and they're paying the taxes and they're really not doing anything with it. And so we'll look at a county and kind of try to figure out, if there's a demand there, for people buying land there. So what I'll do is I might look on Zillow and look at, the sales in the last year versus what's for sale now. And then, if the solds outweigh the for sale, then I'll look at some other things. And I like one thing I might do is I might call a realtor and say, hey, look, or are people looking for, how are the infill lots doing in this area? Is it a growing area? Can I make some money here? And then, you get one good realtor and they'll give you, some good information and you can decide to, move forward with that county. Once you do that, then you would pull the data from Data Tree or Agent Pro, PropStream, wherever you can get data from. And then you pretty much just send them a letter, and and then you just wait for the calls to come in, and then go from there.
What kind of letter do you send them?
So this one is a neutral letter. So this.
What's that mean? What's neutral letter mean?
Sure. So it's basically saying, hey, I'm interested in land in your area. Please give me a call back at this number. There's no price on it or anything. Now there are other people like the Land Academy, and they do blind offers where they'll actually send you, a written offer and say, hey, we're looking to buy your property. We'll pay $8,200 for it or whatever. So go ahead.
No, and how do they determine like that value, like what they're offering?
Sure. So one way you can do it is you can look at Zillow and download all the data and then pretty much try to figure it out per zip code on how much that valued land is. And then, you may offer anywhere from 10 to 25 to 35% of value. Another good way to find value on land is because right now is kind of a tough time because you go in a lot of areas and the land is overpriced. That you will reach out to a realtor and say, hey, what are the market values of land in this area? But, you have to be careful because one neighborhood could be, different than the next. And then, you start getting into larger acreages, the price most likely is going to go down. So you have a number of factors when you're dealing with this.
Gabe, you had a question? I thought you were going to ask something.
Yeah, for those people who don't know, when you say infill, let's explain that a little bit further for those that are listening who don't know anything about land.
Sure. So infill lots are basically your standard residential lot. I'd say, it may go up to like an acre, but, you just look at basically your lots that are in the city. And, I don't really like to focus on those because I kind of just find a little more headaches with them. You got to, see if there's sewer on it, see if there's, water and all that good stuff. And once you get to the bigger deals, you can actually probably start making some more money. So, but I mean, you can do some infill lots, especially if you get into these better areas and, the prices of homes are like $1 million. You definitely can make some good money.
So when you say some of the bigger deals, you mentioned something for between 1,500 to 8K, sell, purchase for 1,500, sell for 8K. For those who don't know, you can actually take that 8K, you can actually put them on, blast it out there through different marketing channels and sell those seller financing to people who are looking for that type of property. And we have certain areas of our town, Dan, when I say town, our region, perfect. I'm talking perfect for seller financing. They want land. They want to buy in this area. It's a certain group of people that are they just love that stuff. They want to hold on to it for a long time, and they just want to gradually build their house as time goes on. So that's great. But then you were talking about some bigger property, some bigger deals. What qualify a bigger deal, just to kind of give us a perspective of like how that works?
Okay. So there's two ways you can look at bigger deals. You can think of bigger acreages or larger, money. Once you get over like probably $75,000, they get harder to sell. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. One thing I did want to add in with, because you asked me about becoming a beginner, is a good sweet spot for that is staying underneath that like 15 or 20,000, because most realtors don't want to sell those properties. There's no money in it. So that's why it's a great place to go, because these people that are looking to sell it, they can't find a good realtor because none of them want to give them the time of day. And so, the next day they get your letter and they're like, hey, let's just sell this land, and they're willing to take a loss on it or break even or whatever. And then you come along and sell it for double or triple.
Wow, that's awesome. I love the perspective. And for those who don't know, when you're looking at real estate investing, you want to look at how you're marketing and what is the demand. And Dan went into that. When you could go into a new area, you can call realtors, you could find out where the demand is. In single family, it's really easy. You could just pull comps, right? And you can go, oh, wow, there's not a lot of comps in this area, or the properties are flying off the shelf and there's 15 days on market or something like that. You can see those things. But when you're looking at land, it's a little different, right? And it's really cool to see. You want to know your buyers, from my understanding, what Dan's talking about. For us, we know the exit strategy when we see these properties, going, okay, this one would probably fit this type of buyer. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on, how to acquire, knowing this is my exit. But really cool thing that I don't know if anyone got it or not, but if you didn't pick up on this part, the realtors or the people that are representing the sellers don't want to deal with properties that are like really low end, right? And we call low end anywhere between 25 and under. And so the reasoning why, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, is that the commission split on that stuff is really cheap. I mean, they're spending hours putting up signs, marketing it, listing it, going through all of the stuff for the seller. And then at the end of the day, they're making maybe a 3%, maybe a 6% commission on $25,000, $20,000, which isn't a big tug on, it doesn't really impact their dollar amount. It might impact their volume and they see their name out there more. But this is huge, because then now that you can actually contact these realtors or contact some of these people and say, hey, do you know anyone who's looking at selling at properties like that? And do you get referrals from people like this, Dan, from realtors are going, you know what, I have a friend or I know somebody who has a property, I don't really want to list it,
Sometimes I do. I don't really focus on those anymore. So, but yeah, you do get those. And adding to those as far as with that type of property, in that price range, like you touched on earlier, the seller financing is a great way to go on that, because a lot of people just don't have the money on that. And, but they can come up with a down payment.
Now, Dan, most of these buyers, because when you look at it, most of these pieces of land are recreational, right? When the people go out hunting, camping, those are the type of lands that I'm seeing in these land groups that they're really targeting. And so you're buying it. Would you say you're buying it 10, 20 cents on the dollar? And then what are they selling? What are you seeing these guys selling it for? About like 70 cents. So they're still getting your end buyer is still getting a sweet deal.
Oh, for sure. In this market, I mean, we've seen somewhere, they're selling it at close to 100%. It kind of just depends on where you're at. But yeah, generally kind of the rule of thumb has always been, you're selling it for 80% of market value. So they're still getting a rockin' deal.
Now, I know you change your model. You do a lot more funding on these deals. So you're working with wholesalers, because I know you just a couple of weeks ago, you flew out to Cabo because you do some funding for some you do some funding for other guys that are out there finding the land, bringing the land in, and they're what, cutting it up, subdividing up, and then turn around and selling it as like seller financing on those recreational land. So I know, how does that model? You said that model is what, 50% or something like that?
So when you're saying what we pay for those value properties,
yeah, like I know you do more of the funding on it. So these
right.
guys are out there, you're working with wholesalers, and you know the model, like how you guys split that, or how does that work?
Gotcha. Yeah, so it just depends. It goes anywhere from like, so what we're doing is we're funding the deal, and they're pretty much taking care of everything. The marketing, dealing with the realtors, dealing with the buyers, and then when it's all said and done and we close, generally we get anywhere from 35 to 50% of the profit. Now, the good thing about it is when we're in it, we kind of are a second set of eyes and can check over everything, make sure that they're not missing anything, make sure there's no mistakes. So, it might be a little higher than what some people want to pay, but at the end of the day, it's you're working with another land investor, kind of like the Shark Tank, where you have other people and and more people helping you out.
And what's the turnaround time once you guys now they lock it up, shop it, or do you guys lock it up, close it, and then sell it? How does that, like, and then also how long does that process take?
Yeah, so we will generally always buy it, and then once it's bought, then we just resell it, and it just kind of depends. The lower price properties, we bought one for 90 a couple months back, and it took like probably about 45, 60 days, and we sold it for 210. And then, but these larger ones that I'm dealing with, they're going on for like 6 to 9 months. So we have some other big properties that, they're going to probably come in where a developer comes in and wants to, subdivide or build houses. And so they're taking a while because obviously the feasibility and the due diligence takes a long time for those guys to do.
Got it. Good stuff. So is that like somebody has a comment there, or is that just like somebody trying to spam? I can't tell what that is. Can you tell their game?
I can't tell. It looks like that.
I'm sorry.
I don't know what that is. Let's keep moving. Dan, this is really good stuff. Okay, so future growth, future stuff that's going on, just to kind of highlight the awesome perks about the land industry, what's happening with land. What can you share about like what's happening now, and if there's anything exciting that you've been working on right now that's just kind of highlights why you're still involved and why you still love doing land?
Sure. Well, more people are getting into this now, so you kind of just have to look for different things to do, and maybe change up your marketing letters because a lot of them are the same ones. You got to change up your strategies. Like, hey, maybe I'll do some more seller financing or some lease options or whatever. What I've been getting into is land development, and I'm working on a bigger project. I don't really want to kind of get into the state it's in, but it's that's another way to go too. But it is involved a lot more work, and the whole time on that is could be like a year or two. It just kind of depends.
Wow. So qualify a bigger project. I mean, are we talking about hundreds of acres, 10 acres, 1,000 acres?
So this one is 500 acres. It's,
okay.
Selling for 5 million. So, but, I like to look at, anywhere from like 50 acres and up, and, we could go even smaller than that. It kind of just depends.
Now Dan and I met in a land mastermind group. That's how we kind of met, and then come to find out, he's right in my backyard. So, if there's anybody out there that wants to be part that's already doing land, and you guys want to join our land mastermind group, reach out to us. We're always looking for people to join in that group, and a lot of great value in that group. But if you're new in it, we prefer people with some experience that you're bringing a lot of value to the group there. So, but if you're not and you want to get into it, or even I know, Dan, you also have people bringing capital to you because you're redeploying it into a lot of these, because you're connected with a lot of these wholesaler land investors are always looking for capital. So, that's another way. If anybody wants to reach out to Dan, they're redeploying capital out there into doing some of these, and you're getting what, a 50% profit margin or 30 to 50% on that?
Yeah, generally, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what we do there.
Nice. Now, Gabe, you just did one recently, right? A beautiful land deal, right? And then you're looking at doing another one, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, so I'm just getting into doing more land stuff. I have some mobile home parks and stuff like that that has land attached to it. So now I get to go into the land space also of going, what do we want to do with this extra piece of land? Do we want to develop it? Do we want to keep it as a park or sell off that side of it where we don't really need it? So stuff like that. So that's what we're learning and getting more into. To be fully transparent, guys, I love just learning new strategies on how to be productive, because that's one of the ways how you just stay on top of the game, is always looking at new stuff. Like Dan said, there's more people moving into the land industry, and you guys are part of this mastermind. That's sounds amazing, where you guys get to share ideas and marketing tips and other stuff like that. So that's really cool. So guys, if you want to get involved, like again, get a hold of Mark and Dan. But that's really where I'm at in my property. So when I ask these questions, Dan, I'm kind of thinking, okay, what can I be doing with mine, and what can we, the ins and outs. Let's talk a little bit about utilities of the land. How do you look at the utilities of a land? If you have 50 acres that are out in the woods, like, how are you selling that? Who are you selling this to, compared to, something that's maybe has road frontage and it has, the utility set up?
Sure. Well, generally, when I'm buying the property, I don't really worry too much about the utilities. If the seller comes in there and says, hey, it does have them, then yeah, it's an added bonus. And then we'll kind of look at the price and reconsider of offering more money if, it has a septic tank or possibly add sewer or whatever. So we will definitely throw more money at that if, if it has those things. As far as those bigger properties, it kind of just depends. A lot of times those are hunting properties. A lot of times they might be recreational properties where you can take your ATVs out there, or they could be farmland.
Why don't you Gabe, you're on mute there, but anyways, why don't you look at the utilities?
It's just something we don't really do until we get it under contract, because it's just one more thing that we don't have to worry about, and then and our prices are so low, or our offer is so low, that it's not going to matter at the end of the day if it has them or not. If it does have it, like I said, it's kind of like an added bonus.
Yeah, we were in one of our masterminds the other day, and we were talking about what happens if the market shifts in the land world, because I always, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the land's probably going to be one of the first things that kind of shift. But you guys are all saying, because you guys are buying it so cheap, like 30 cents on the dollar, you guys can sit there and just even let it go like at 50 cents on the dollar and still get out from underneath it. So I guess you guys kind of look at that, and that's your model, from what I understand.
Exactly. Yeah, we generally don't worry about the market too much, because if it tanks, we're buying it so cheap that, hey, if we need to dump it, then we can dump it and still make it money, or even break even. Or we can also look to sell or finance it off if we didn't really plan on that. We still could do that and probably have no problem finding a buyer.
So how many offers are you guys putting out there to find this type of a deal? Like, why would somebody sell it way below market value?
So depending on if you're looking for lower price deals or higher price deals, it's going to be probably anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 letters, and generally per one deal. And generally, sometimes people just don't know what they have, so they might sell it off to you, because a lot of times the assessed values don't match up with what it's truly worth. Like, I know some good states I work with that it's way lower than than the real market value is. So it may say it's worth 3,000 on paper, but the real market value is 30, and so that seller, they don't really know the true market value of it. The other way of it is, it just kind of their land sits there. They've been paying taxes on it forever. They just have been wanting to sell it forever, and they get your letter and they go and and call you and do it. Also, if it's inherited, you might have a property or a family that inherited, like, whatever, big acreage. It could be 100 acres or whatever, and they don't know what to do with it, and none of them really want to get involved with getting a realtor. So they're just like, hey, we got this letter that we found in mom and dad's paperwork. Let's call this guy and see what he'll offer us. And the big kind of sell on that is that it's quick, fast, and easy, and they're not going to have to deal with anything. Basically, it all kind of, like I said at the beginning, it kind of is the same exact thing that happens in a regular single family rental. But the thing is the people aren't attached to the land like they are to the house. So, I see other land investors that they'll sell off a property. Let's say they need money for another big deal, and let's say they have a lot they know is worth 50, but they need like 20,000 for another deal that they're going to get in that's going to make them a lot more money. They may sell it off to you just to move on and get their cash.
And how do you like go about valuating land? Because I know, like, Gabe mentioned something before, like if it's way out in the woods and there's no utilities there, or if it's like steep and incline, and it's like, it could be a side of a cliff. Like, how do you guys determine value on that?
Yeah, well, good question, because he talked about that earlier, and that was one of the things I was thinking about, that land is much harder to value than houses, a lot harder. And so that's why the model is kind of, pay 25, 35% of value, because, if you get it wrong, at least, you still have a lot to, a lot of room there. So the biggest thing we always do is we always contact like 2 or 3 realtors and kind of get their opinions to kind of see what it's worth. And obviously before then we kind of just look at on Zillow and Land Watch and other sites and kind of see like how are those values comparing with what we're buying it from. And then once we get it under contract, then we'll contact a realtor and kind of get a better opinion. But they're not always right because, as I said, like land is just more difficult to value. So you have to be a little careful with that.
Got it. Gabe, let me ask you that same question, because I know you have a little experience on valuating land. You have a little input there, like how you go about valuating a piece of land, Gabe?
Yeah, guys, one of the things I wanted to ask Dan, and this is my perspective, is you really need to know your area. Like when there's land that shows up in some of our areas, I know that what we call that the wet side of town, and that's basically sides that are either in the flood zone or known to have a lot of water in that area when big storms come in and stuff, because we're so close to the coast. And it's kind of takes a little bit of an education and knowing the area to know the values to assess it quicker. How do you guys go about that, Dan? Because that's just my perspective. Like, you don't want to be buying land in areas that you have no clue about, in other states and other stuff, in my perspective, unless you have some boots on the ground that can say, this is an awesome deal.
Sure. So some people will actually contact realtors and generally like do a really big due diligence on a county or a city and kind of find out everything about it. Some people will kind of just give the shotgun approach and send letters out there and find out about it afterwards. And that's kind of what I do. There's a county in that I like is full of like a bunch of wetlands, but I've sold like a number of properties there. So you just never know. It kind of, like in Texas, an area with a bunch of wetlands would be hard to sell, but like in Florida, you're expected to have wetlands. But generally, like I know with most of the land investors that I deal with, most of them don't do like a super amount of due diligence on like as far as trying to figure out if there's, like should we send to this area? They'll find out a little bit, look and see, make sure that there's sales there. But as far as like other things, they kind of just mail them, and then if they might do like a couple thousand mailers there, and then if it doesn't, if they don't have any luck in that area, they'll move on to somewhere else.
Got it. That makes sense. Go ahead, Mark. Looks like you had
something. So I was actually going to ask a question a little bit. So When you do you have to go through the same process of like closing, like when you go take down to use a title company when you purchase land, or is it like a bill of sale? Like, is it a lot easier process, or I guess it depends on the piece of property?
Sure. Well, generally, one of the things I try to sell the buyers on is that we're going to close quickly, and when they try to overcomplicate it, they can. So I just say, hey, look, if you've ever sold a house or bought a house or whatever, like it's going to pretty much be like the same thing. It's going to go. I don't really self close anything. You can do that when you have those lower price properties, but I tell them, hey, look, it's going to be really easy if you make it easy. And so the title company is going to handle everything. They're going to send you some paperwork. You're pretty much just going to have to sign it, and that'll be it. And the only thing that really may delay it is because of the title companies are really backed up right now. It may take 2 months, compared to one.
So in a sense, your closing costs with title companies and everything could be more expensive than actually buying a piece of land.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. So exactly. Yeah.
That's a good problem. So if somebody's new getting into this and they want to get into like resale, wholesaling land, and do you think it's what's the best way of going about it, and like what type of tools? I know there's some tools out there to kind of like looking at a piece of property like Google Earth. Also, I think checking and see if there's wetlands, and then also like telling the steep of the slopes. Or do you recommend them doing it in their backyard, like what Gabe was mentioning?
I wouldn't really recommend it doing it in your backyard. It really, I mean, yeah, you can do that if you think it's an area that might be good, but you don't have to. I would, like, I live in Florida, and Florida, I don't like the Florida market as far as, selling, as far as buying and selling land. It's just too competitive. Too many people get letters. Too many people think their property is worth $1 million. So I don't send mail here. Basically, whatever I'm going to do here is what I'm going to do in Texas or whatever. I mean, I'm going to send somebody out there and have them set some eyes on it, be it a realtor. Maybe I'll hire somebody off of Craigslist, but I'm going to send somebody out there to look at it. I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
So you're saying you wouldn't recommend it in your area, but if somebody lives in Texas, like Gabe, I mean, he knows his backyard. So I guess it depends on where the market is for the individual. So on something like that in the backyard. The second question is like, what kind of tools? Like, I know you're doing it virtually. Like, what kind of tools do you recommend? Like, I think there's a government website for wetlands. I think there's a couple other websites. And plus, how do you use Google Earth?
Sure. So those websites that you're talking about, I haven't used those in a while. I use MapRight, and that's a paid service, but you can Google those other ones that help you look at flood maps. They're just not as good. MapRight will actually, let you know in seconds if it's in a flood zone or in wetlands. So those are some. So that's a good one to go off of. And then as far as other websites, I mean, pretty much that's my go-to. I don't really need to go anywhere else to kind of look at it. It'll give me the slope because you can actually put it in 3D mode. It'll give you the contour lines where you can see like, how far, is it, at a 30% grade on that property. And then, you can
what's that mean?
That.
What's that mean a little bit? So a lot of people listening, contour lines and
Sure. So, and you also can use Google Earth to do this. I just don't do that. But so if the property is sloped more than like probably 25 or 30%, then it's going to be harder to sell because you're going to have to pay like a builder to come in there and do, a lot of extra work. I don't even think you can put a driveway on those type of properties. Now, if it was hunting land or, recreational property, that might be a good property for ATVs. That's where you might need to reach out to a realtor and say, hey, can you go out there and look at this? What's your thoughts on this? And then what I like to tell them is, hey, I'm not going to give you what I'm buying it for. Tell me what I think I would sell it for in 45 days. And then, if they say, well, you can probably get, 40,000 for this, and let's say I'm buying it for 10, then I'll be like, okay, well, then maybe I'll move forward with this, and I might probably get a second or third opinion on that.
Got it. Let's talk about the exiting when you guys have a piece of property. Let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. Who's your type of buyer and how do you guys market that property?
Sure. So the lower price properties, a lot of people have luck on Facebook, and especially if you're going to finance it, and that's a good way to test out an area too as well. Like because you can throw an ad up on there, and or not even an ad, put something up on one of the groups and say, hey, look, I got a property in this county, at $20,000, and if your phone rings off the hook, you know you got something good there. But as far as like Facebook, yeah, you can throw them there, and that's where, for whatever reason, people used to put them up on Craigslist, but now kind of Facebook is the one to go to, where you're going to sell those ones for like under 25K, especially if you're going to finance them. I know guys that are doing that are just killing it. As far as larger properties, generally the best site is Land Watch, which is actually they're all three together: Land Watch, Lands of America, and Land and Farm. And so those are kind of like the go-to if you want to get the most traffic. I think they get something like 25 times the traffic of like the next land website underneath that. So, but they are expensive. You're going to pay probably like a $400 or $500 subscription to start off with and that would be to get their premier listings. I don't know what their regular listings are, but if you're not doing premier listings on there, then you're not going to see the results. And I've sold properties on there where I actually changed the price on all of my listings, and I forgot to do it on Land Watch, and because I had it on Land Watch, I sold it for like 3,000 more, and then and then the guy didn't see the other prices, so I ended up selling it for that amount.
Sorry about that. Very good stuff. So I think no, this is exciting. Like, how would people go about finding you, Dan? Like, what's the process? Like, we can plug you here on I think because you fund deals too, correct? You have like
sure.
a funding website or something like that.
Sure. So you can go to ifundland.com, ifundland.com. That's basically kind of just like a submission page of where you can submit deals if you need funded. I also have another website called elite360res.com, elite360res.com. So that's how you can find me, or you can look me up on Facebook.
Sweet.
What do those do? How you do the funding? How does that really work out?
So most of my funding deals are done through other people that are like in my other masterminds. And so, they'll have a deal, and like a lot of times it's not even that they don't, like, it's not that they like maybe don't have a lot of money in their bank account or whatever, or they're struggling. It's more the fact that maybe they've got like $200,000 or $300,000 out on their own land deals, and now they're out of money. And so, one day they just got another deal in their, in their pocket, and they need money, and they, it's just another way to fund it, and then kind of move on to the next one. And that's what a lot of guys that I actually fund deals for, they do the same thing. In fact, I do it too. I haven't had to do it recently, but where I'll need money. So if you could get one good hit, and if it ends up being a large price property, like, you're going to start needing to look for money. So
yeah, we have the same problem in the resident. Yeah, we have the same problem in ours. That your capital's always coming in, going out, coming in, going out. When you, especially being out there and you're involved in the business, you'll have a great deal that comes across your desk, and you're like, oh shoot, I just put capital. I just went under contract with this property over here, and we got capital tied up over there. So yeah, that's the beauty about this, and working with other real estate investors, we all kind of network with each other and always do deals together. And that's why I love this. When I first got into real estate years ago, I was like, oh my God, I got to be quiet. I don't want anybody knowing what I'm doing. But in fact, we all kind of work together. There's so much meat in some of these deals, so there's a lot more to go around. So, and it sounds like the exact same thing that you're doing there and funding the deal. So that's sweet. That's nice stuff. So, do you recommend somebody new getting into this? Like, how do you like going about it and just starting out? And like, why wouldn't they do an assignment versus a double close? Like, when they're getting into this, I'm just curious.
You definitely can do assignment. The only thing you risk with that is, actually, it's happened to me like a number of times, is where that person gets another letter and it's from, it's for a higher amount, and then, you lose the deal. That's one of the reasons why I left Florida. That actually happened to me in here. I had it sold actually. I was buying from the guy, I found the buyer, and I was trying to get a hold of him. And he finally returned my call, and he said, "Hey, I sold it to somebody else. So what do you do?" Like, it wasn't like a huge dollar amount, and even if it was, the the time to kind of go after them and try to get my money, it's like just move on to the next deal. But yeah, I mean, assignments are definitely, I've done on ones that I thought were like riskier properties, where like I thought I might have a tough time selling it, and if I lose the deal, I lose the deal. You also can try to go to areas that are not as heavily mailed, and do an assignment there where like you don't have to worry about as much as like somebody coming away and stealing the property.
Good stuff. All right, that makes sense. So I think we got a lot in. It's pretty straightforward. I like the whole thing on the this whole land stuff, wholesaling. So yeah, it's what's got me intrigued into it. So it's good stuff. And Dan, I enjoyed meeting you. And I think if anybody watching us have any questions, if not, I think we can kind of just pretty much call it a day and end it. And like as I said, reach out to Dan if anybody. We'll put all his contact information. So go to our Real Estate Power Play website, or actually Facebook page, or our YouTube page. And we'll also plug a lot of this information in the bios and one of the podcasts for this particular episode. So Gabe, do you have anything else to say there?
That's it, Dan. I really do appreciate it. My eyes are open to my mind is going. So if I'm quiet because I'm looking at areas that I'm going, oh, I could do this over here, and this is a great tip, and it's just helping me formulate. We just created another marketing campaign, and I'm like, wow, you know what? I can also add land to it also in this particular area. So Dan, I appreciate your help because you helped me, and I hope this helped out a lot of people who are looking at getting more into land or are already into it. So thanks a lot, man. I really do appreciate it.
Dan, pleasure.
No problem, guys. I appreciate it. Guys. Thanks for the time. See you guys.